And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed. To you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today, while I'm preheating this skillet and getting some oil in here, we are going to be making something that I bet a lot of you really like and don't know how to cook. We're going to make country fried steak with homemade gravy, mashed potatoes, and one of my favorite side dishes, Harvard Beets, done the easy way. Well, I'll show you how to do that. I've got my oven heating. I'm just going to bake some frozen biscuits, some buttermilk frozen biscuits that you just get, in the freezer department. They're delicious. And sometimes you want to make homemade. Sometimes you're in a hurry. You just want to get dinner on the table. So you just buy the frozen ones. They're delicious. So we've got a dozen of the buttermilk frozen biscuits baking in the oven. I have a large skillet here that I'm preheating, medium-high heat, with just some canola oil in it, about, I don't know, maybe, half an inch deep. You want to get that hot. The key to making any shallow fried, or deep fried for that matter, but in this case we're shallow frying, the key to making a crispy, crunchy coating on whatever you're cooking is to get that oil hot before you put the food in. If I were to put my steaks right in that pan right now, all it would do is absorb the grease and be just, soggy. You don't want to do that. So get your oil hot before you start. So that's going to get preheating. And we're going to start on the potatoes. Now, I've already peeled and cubed a few. I've got a couple here left to go. Country fried steak requires mashed potatoes. That's just one of those givens. You got to have mashed potatoes to go with your country fried steak. I like the Yukon Gold potatoes, but you can use whatever kind of potato that you have here. I'm today using the Yukon Golds that you can buy in the grocery store. They used to be kind of a gourmet potato, but now you can buy them anywhere. They're delicious for mashed potatoes. If you've never tried them, as you can see, they're more yellow colored than your normal white potatoes or even your red potatoes, but the flesh is buttery and it's absolutely delicious in mashed potatoes. So that's what I'm using today. But if you don't have Yukon Golds, use whatever kind of potato that you have at your house. Now, I'm cooking 5 pounds of potatoes because I'm feeding a lot of people. One of the questions that I get asked a lot on this program when I see people out or they write is, who eats all that food that you cook? Because you only see me. I got a whole crew of people back here that love Everyday Manna days when we do this program because we eat all the food. So those of you out there who think this food goes to waste, rest assured, there is not a morsel of food left when we get through. Matter of fact, I was talking and my cameraman that you're looking at right now is raising his hand because he gets to eat this food too. So I'm feeding a lot of people. So I'm cooking 5 pounds of potatoes. If you're feeding a family of 4, probably, I don't know, maybe 2.5 pounds of potatoes, plenty for 4 people. But I'm feeding a few more than that. So I've got 5 pounds of potatoes just peeled and put in a pot with some water, and I'm going to bring that up to a boil because those are actually going to take longer to cook than my steaks are. So that's what's in that pan is Yukon Gold potatoes. I don't like to cover my potatoes because some people do until it comes to a boil and then they take it off. I forget. And then the starch in the potato will make it boil all over your stove. So I'm just not even going to cover it. That way I can keep a visual eye on it. I've got that coming up. My my oil is coming to good temperature. So let's talk about the steak. Now, for this particular recipe, we're going to use cube steak. You've all seen this in the grocery store. What cube steak is an inexpensive cut of steak, which is typically a round steak, which on its own can be very tough. But what they do is at the grocery store, they run it through a machine that tenderizes it and puts all of these little marks in there. So it's very tender and it's very delicious and it's perfect for country fried steak. So my recipe, I use the cube steak that you buy in the grocery store. And I also do something else a little different. I like my cube steak cut into finger-sized pieces because I think it's easier to dip it in the gravy that way. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can leave your pieces whole. This is how it comes in the package. But I really do like to cut them, as you can see, into little strips. And so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to cut mine into a little bit more manageable sized pieces because I think it's more fun to eat that way. You know, and your children, if you've got something cut maybe in a different shape or a different size, they're more likely to try it if you make it fun. So we're going to cut these into little finger-sized shapes. Now, for the breading, I have, let me wipe my hands, I'm going to use all-purpose flour. Just, you know, for that many pieces, probably about a cup or so. It, you know, just use your own judgment on that. I have about a teaspoon of paprika, which is not a typical ingredient for this dish, but I find it makes it just a little, something in there that people go, what in the world did you put in there? It tastes good. So I use a little paprika. About a tablespoon of salt, because this is where the flavoring's gonna come in. And some freshly ground pepper. I like fresh ground pepper. If you're a fan of this program, you know that I don't care for the pre-ground stuff. I just don't think it tastes as good. So I always use freshly ground. So that's what this is, just in a dish. In this dish, I have just 3 eggs that I have beaten and added just about a tablespoon or so of milk. You could use water, milk, half and half, whatever you have. Just something to kind of loosen it up a little bit. And I double dip mine. Now, let's go through this process. Here's our steak. Let's go ahead and just lightly salt and pepper one side of our steak. I've got salt going everywhere here. And let's add some fresh ground pepper. I like things well seasoned with pepper. I'm a big pepper fan, as you well know. We're going to let that set for just a second. We're going to go to a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to show you how we double dip this and get it into the oil. I'll be right back with you in just a minute. Now, we're going to take one piece of our steak. We're going to dip it in the flour lightly. Can you see what I'm doing? Messy job, but that's okay. Dip it into the egg mixture and then back into the flour. What that first little coating does is give that egg something to adhere to. Then take it and put it in your hot oil. If you don't see that sizzle that you see right there, you need to take it back out, let that oil get hotter. Because you want to see that sizzle. That is what gives the crunch on the outside. One of my father-in-law, Mike's dad, one of his favorite dishes for me to cook was fried chicken. He loved fried chicken. He passed away about 6 years ago, but one of his favorite dishes was fried chicken because I always got it really good and crunchy, and this is the secret, which we've not made fried chicken on here, and I'm going to do that very soon because I find a lot of people really don't know how to make fried chicken. But he loved fried chicken because it was good and crunchy. And how do you get that crunch on the outside? Is get that oil hot and the double dipping. So we're just going to batter up these country fried steak pieces. I love this dish. This is just comfort food at its finest. I just love with gravy, mashed potatoes, And if your pieces fall apart like this one's about to, that's okay. It doesn't matter if it's in little bite-sized pieces. That's all right. Get them in there. We're going to probably need to do this in 2 batches because you don't want to overcrowd that skillet. If you overcrowd your skillet, then it steams instead of frying, and you do not want to do that. So let's get, it's a messy job, but that's okay. It's delicious. Easy dish that you can make for your family. And this is one of those dishes that you could get home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon from work and get on the table and have a delicious meal for your family cooked in no time. It really, 25, 30 minutes and you've got dinner. I have a friend that I got the sweetest email from, and I'm going to tell you about this little email that I got from her. Rebecca Reynolds, you've seen her on the program. I'm sure she won't mind me sharing the story. And she sent me the sweetest email the other day, and she was talking about how she has just started cooking. Because of this program, she's really started cooking for her family, and how much it means to her family to sit down at the dinner table to a healthy, good meal. And I love to hear stories like that because that's really one of the goals of this program, is to get you in the kitchen cooking for your family, because it goes beyond just nourishment. It goes beyond filling the belly. It's filling the soul. And it just, so much can happen around the dinner table. And I think that's one of the things that has gotten lost in society today, is families sitting down to eat dinner together. So thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that story with me. These cook really quickly, and you see that golden, wonderful golden pieces around there? That's what you want. Don't overcrowd your skillet. It just takes a few minutes, and they'll be done. So while those are cooking, we can talk, and I'll go ahead and bread up these other ones and let them set, and we'll get them in another batch. But like I said, this is a meal that you can cook very quickly for your family any night of the week, and oops, forgot to do my flour first. And your family can be eating in 30 minutes. We really do need to get back to that. We need to get back to having family meals together and sharing experiences and getting your kids in the kitchen. My children are here today. My son is sitting right over there playing as we're cooking today. But they love to get in the kitchen. They love to help me in the kitchen cooking and doing different things in the kitchen with me, because that shares the experience. And both of my children actually are quite good in the kitchen. They, you learn at an early age. I have never had any formal training cooking whatsoever. I get asked that quite often, have you been to culinary school? I'm like, no. Where did I learn to cook? From a child on up, I was in the kitchen with my mother, helping her mashing potatoes. I've told you 1,000 times, mashing potatoes was always my job, and to this day is still my job. When I go to my mom's house, if she's cooked dinner and she's made mashed potatoes, that's my job. I have to mash the potatoes. But I learned from my mother, and as I've grown up, I love to read about cooking. I read cookbooks all the time, and I just enjoy it. So if you want to be a better cook, how do you do that? Get in the kitchen. Try new recipes. Read different techniques and different ways to do things. That is how you learn to be a cook. I'm not a chef. I'm just a cook. We've got our little things breaded here. Yum. I love this meal. I love just simple food that you can cook at home, and it's really good. Look how good those look. Oh, they're golden and brown, and they really only take 2 or 3 minutes per side. So let's check on our little pieces there. Okay, now we have got our second batch. We took out our first batch of our little country fried steak fingers, if you will, and we put in our second batch because we want to let them get good and brown and done, and they really are just about done. They really only take about 3 to 4 minutes in hot oil on each side. So watch them, don't overcook them. Then they get dry and they're not good. But you don't, of course you want them done in the middle. Now our potatoes are coming up to a boil. You see that starch on the top? That's what I'm talking about, that will overflow if you're not careful. So let's get started on our little gravy ingredients, because we're gonna make a gravy, a pan gravy in that pan. I've got out my favorite little, next to my favorite little cooking gadget here that I've showed you before. I've got 1 medium onion. I love this little thing for onions because I've switched to glasses and the onions make me cry, so I use this a lot. You just cut it in half, peel it, cut it in half, boom, there you go, diced onions. It's that quick, that easy. One of my favorite little tools in the kitchen now. And there you go, because you want 1 medium onion diced for our gravy. Let's get that out of the way. We'll just let that set for just a minute. Let's check our chicken. Thinking fried chicken. Our little steak fingers, they need about another minute and they'll be done. And we're gonna make, to go alongside these, now our biscuits are baking, our frozen biscuits. We've got our Yukon Golds. I'm gonna turn them down just a little bit so they don't overflow here. I'm using Yukon Golds today, but you can use whatever you like. Potatoes, they take about 20 minutes, so they are typically the first thing you should put. To give you a timeline, get your potatoes going first, then fry your steak, and your beets will literally take just a couple of minutes. They're delicious. We're gonna take a quick break. When I come back, we're gonna make the gravy, mash the potatoes, and do the Harvard beets. We'll be right back with you in just a minute. All right, now here's our finished little chicken fingers. These are ready to go. Look how crunchy and delicious. And here's a little broken off piece. I think I probably better taste that one. Make sure it's good. So good. I shouldn't do this on the air, should I? My camera people are going, because I got a mouthful of food. We have our onion. This is our pan that we made our chicken in. Now, I poured off steak. I keep saying chicken. Why do I do that? It's chicken fried steak, country fried steak. And I keep calling it chicken. But anyway, our steak, this is the pan that we cooked it in. I poured off all but about probably 4 or 5 tablespoons of the drippings. You see those little bits down in the bottom? That's flavor. Leave that in there. We want to saute our onion in that. That is so good. You've got to try that recipe. These won't take but just a second. Oh, delicious, delicious, delicious. Tender and so good. If you've never tried cube steak, maybe you've been a little afraid of it, don't know what to do with it, this is the perfect recipe to start out with. Let's turn that down just a little bit. Let's let those go for just a minute. In the meantime, in this back pan, I have got it heating up to like medium-high heat, and here I have 2 cans of just sliced beets, just little sliced beets. I love beets. Now, I hope you do. If you haven't ever tried them, you need to try them. I've drained them, and I'm gonna put the juice from the can in that back skillet, or saucepan, excuse me, along with, now that's the juice from 2 cans of drained beets, along with about ½ a cup of apple cider vinegar, and about ½ a cup of just plain white sugar, a little bit of salt for flavor, and a little bit of cracked black pepper, freshly ground black pepper. Oh, I love beets. Love them. I love fresh beets. We were talking about that over the break. I love fresh roasted beets, which we are gonna do on this program. They are delicious. If you don't think you like beets, you're wrong. You do. You just don't know it because they are very, very good. Whisk that together to dissolve the sugar. Just kind of let that hang for just a minute. To our onions that are sauteing away, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of dried thyme. And I'm going to add a little more pepper because I really like my pepper, or my gravy, really peppered. Okay, now my beet juice has come up to a simmer, so I'm going to turn that down to medium real quick. To this pan, I'm going to add, I don't know how much we're going to need because it depends on how much drippings that you have, but probably about a fourth of a cup, a fourth to a half a cup. And I'll show you how you'll know when to stop. Take a whisk, and you want to whisk in just plain all-purpose flour. What you're making is a roux. And what you want to add is enough flour until there's no wet, as you'll see in just a second. I think that's going to be perfect. You see how the skillet looks dry? That's what you want. Maybe just a smidgen more, teaspoon or so more. What this will do is thicken your gravy, and this makes just a quick pan gravy. Let that go for about 30 seconds to a minute, because what that will do is get that raw flavor out of your flour. So just kind of let that go for just a second. To that, we're going to add about 2 cups, and I'm using just a boxed broth. Slowly, while you're whisking, slowly add that in. Turn your heat down to like simmer. Add your broth in, and you see this delicious onion and thyme flavored. I'm going to switch to a spoon right here. Onion and thyme flavored gravy. Oh, my lands, does that look good or what? Just let that come up to a simmer, and it will thicken as it simmers. Let it go, and if it seems to be a little thick as it comes back up to a simmer, if you think you need to add a little more broth, add a little more broth. You want a thicker gravy, but you don't want it too thick. All right, now, when your beet liquid comes to a simmer, get out in your cup, just get out, I don't know, a fourth to a half of a cup of the liquid. You want to use cornstarch. This is a brand new box, so let me get that open here. Just plain old cornstarch. Whoops. That will do that when you open it. Every time. Get, I don't know, a tablespoon or so of the cornstarch and dissolve it in the liquid, just like that, with a whisk, as you can see. And then while you're whisking, drizzle that in. And what the cornstarch will do is thicken that liquid. Bring it back up to a simmer, and it'll take it about, I don't know, 30 to 60 seconds. Take your drained beets that you can, the canned sliced beets, and just gently add those, and any little liquid that drains, add those back into your beets. Stir them together, let them heat through literally about a minute. You see the glaze, you see the thickness that gets with the cornstarch? So good, and they really just need a minute or so to heat through, because the beets, of course, are already cooked because of the canned process. We've taken our potatoes out of the pot and drained them. Add a couple of tablespoons of salt, freshly ground pepper, half and half, about a cup. Because I'm doing 5 pounds of potatoes, I'm going to add the whole stick of butter. If you're doing 2.5 pounds, You don't want to add the whole stick. You want to do maybe half. And then whatever method you use to whip your potatoes, we're making the mashed potatoes here. Now here's our final dish. Here is our country fried steak fingers, our mashed Yukon Gold potatoes, just the little biscuits that we baked off, the frozen biscuits, and our wonderful little Harvard beets. And here's our delicious gravy. So let's spoon some of that gravy right over those little chicken fried steak. I keep calling this chicken. Of course, mashed potatoes has to have gravy. That's just a must-do in my house anyway. So there you go. There's your chicken fried, country fried steak fingers, Harvard beets, delicious little just frozen biscuits, and wonderful mashed potatoes. I hope you'll try these recipes, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Manna.
Thank you for watching Everyday Manna with Lisa. This program is made possible by viewers like you. Your support is continually needed to keep Christian programming on the air. Please send your best financial gift to Living Faith Television in care of Everyday Manna, P.O. Box 1867, Abingdon, Virginia 24212.